Lost dog refuses to eat. When the truth is revealed, it leaves everyone stunned. The rain had been falling steadily for hours, drenching the cracked pavement outside Willow Creek Animal Rescue, a struggling shelter on the outskirts of a small Montana town. The air smelled of wet fur and old wood, the scent of too many animals crammed into a space too small to hold them all. Emily Carter, the shelter's director, sat at her desk, rubbing her tired eyes. She had been running Willow Creek for nearly 10 years, but every day felt heavier than the last. The shelter was always at full capacity, donations were scarce, and the list of dogs needing homes grew longer by the week. She glanced at the clock. 8:42 p.m. Another long day, another pile of paperwork waiting for her signature. She sighed, reaching for her pen when a knock sounded at the door. Emily? Sam Rivers, the town's animal control officer, stepped inside, shaking water from his coat. His expression was unreadable, but there was something tense in the way he held his shoulders. "Got a stray for you," he said, stepping aside to reveal a large black Labrador standing just behind him. Emily frowned. The dog was soaking wet, his dark fur plastered to his muscular frame. But something was off. He didn't shiver, didn't whimper, he just stood there, completely still. "He's been sitting outside a cabin up near the old ranger station," Sam continued. "A hiker found him and called us. No collar, no tags. No one in the area recognized him." Emily pushed back her chair and knelt down. "Hey, buddy," she murmured, holding out a hand. The dog's deep brown eyes locked onto hers, steady, focused, unreadable. Most strays were skittish, nervous, or overly eager for attention. But this one? He didn't move. Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. "What's wrong with him?" she asked. Sam hesitated. "That's the thing. He won't bark, won't whine, won't make a sound. He just watches." Emily studied the dog again. His body was tense but controlled, like he was waiting for something. She had never seen a stray behave like this. She reached forward to touch his fur, and the dog flinched. It was so quick, so slight, that she almost missed it. Not fear, not aggression, just restraint. A bad feeling settled in her gut. Who was this dog? Emily led the Labrador down the narrow hallway of the shelter, passing rows of kennels filled with barking dogs. As soon as they entered, the noise erupted. Yapping, whining, howling. Some dogs wagged their tails, others jumped against the bars, desperate for attention. But the black lab, he didn't react at all. No sniffing, no hesitation, just calm, focused silence. She stopped at an empty kennel and unhooked the leash. "All right, buddy, this is you for now." The dog stepped inside without resistance, turned and sat down. His eyes never left her. Emily shut the gate inside. She wasn't sure what she expected. Some dogs curled up in the back, scared of their new surroundings. Others panicked, barking nonstop. But this dog just sat there, staring at the door as if waiting for someone. "What's his name?" a voice asked. Emily turned to see Jake, a 17-year-old volunteer. He had been working at the shelter as part of a community service program after a few run-ins with the law. A rough kid with a sharp tongue, but Emily knew he had a good heart underneath. "No name," she said. "Came in with nothing." Jake studied the Labrador. "Looks like a ghost," he muttered. "Doesn't move, doesn't bark, just waiting." Emily sighed. "Yeah, it's weird." Jake tilted his head. "Maybe he's waiting for his owner." Emily hesitated. That was the thought that had been nagging at her. Dogs didn't act like this unless they were deeply bonded with someone. Still, she had seen enough abandoned animals in her lifetime. Hoping for an owner to come back usually led to disappointment. "I'll scan him for a microchip in the morning," she said. "For now, let's get him some food." Jake grabbed a bowl and filled it with kibble, sliding it into the kennel. The Labrador didn't even sniff it. Emily frowned. Not hungry? Nothing. He just sat there, watching. Jake let out a low whistle. "This dog's kind of creepy, Em." Emily crossed her arms. She agreed. By the next morning, the black lab still hadn't touched his food. Emily stood in front of the kennel, concern growing in her chest. Most strays were ravenous when they arrived at the shelter, but this one acted like food didn't matter. Maybe he's sick, she murmured, reaching for the scanner to check for a microchip. The small device beeped as she ran it over the dog's shoulders. Nothing. No chip, she muttered. Great. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what now? Emily exhaled. We put up a found dog notice and see if anyone claims him. But I'm not optimistic. She watched as the Labrador turned his head toward the front door, not just glancing, staring. She frowned. It was like he was waiting for something, or someone. Jake followed her gaze. You see that? Emily nodded slowly. The shelter was filled with dozens of dogs, but this one had a purpose, a focus, and it sent a shiver down her spine. Who was he? And what had he lost?
The next few days at Willow Creek Animal Rescue passed in a blur of barking dogs, adoption paperwork, and endless cleaning. But through it all, the silent black Labrador remained an enigma. Emily had seen her share of difficult cases, aggressive strays, malnourished rescues, and dogs so terrified of humans that it took weeks just to get them to come near a leash. But this dog? He was different. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't lost. He was waiting. By the third morning, Emily's concern had shifted into full-blown alarm. The Labrador, whom Jake had jokingly nicknamed Echo because of his eerie silence, still hadn't eaten a single bite of food. He drank water, but food? Completely ignored. Emily crouched in front of his kennel, a fresh bowl of kibble in her hands. "Come on, buddy," she murmured. "You have to eat." Echo just stared at her. His deep brown eyes were focused, steady, not vacant, not sickly, just expectant. It made no sense. Most strays inhaled their food within seconds, afraid it might be their last meal. Even the pickiest rescues eventually gave in after a day or two. But Echo? It was as if food didn't matter to him. Jake, who had been watching from the doorway, let out a low whistle. "What's wrong with him?" Emily sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "I don't know. Maybe stress?" Jake frowned. "Nah, this ain't stress. He's too controlled, like he's waiting for something else." Emily couldn't argue with that. Determined to get some answers, Emily decided to try a different approach. The next morning, she brought in a plate of cooked chicken, something that would tempt even the most reluctant eater. She slid it into the kennel and waited. Echo sniffed the air, just barely. Then, instead of eating, he did something that made Emily's breath hitch. He sat up straight, not in the usual casual way that dogs did when waiting for food. No, this was precise, trained. His ears perked, his posture rigid, as if he were waiting for permission. Emily's heart pounded. She had seen this before. Not in strays, but in trained dogs, military dogs, police canines. Carefully, she raised her hand. "Eat," she said. Echo's muscles twitched. For a fraction of a second, it looked like he was about to move, but then he stopped. He stared at her, unblinking. Emily swallowed hard. "He's waiting for the right command," she whispered. Jake, who had been watching in stunned silence, muttered, "Okay, this is officially creepy." Emily knew she had to dig deeper. She spent the rest of the afternoon making phone calls. Local vets, animal control, nearby shelters. Nobody reported a missing black Labrador fitting Echo's description. No one had seen him before. Frustrated, she sat at her desk, staring at the intake file in front of her. No collar, no tags, no chip, no history. It was like Echo had appeared out of nowhere. Then she noticed something strange. Sam, the animal control officer, had noted where Echo was found, near an old ranger station about 5 miles outside of town. Emily frowned. That area was mostly deserted, except for a few remote cabins. A flicker of suspicion crept into her mind. What if Echo hadn't been abandoned? What if he had been left behind? Determined to find out more, Emily decided to do a full physical examination on Echo. Maybe she had missed something. That evening, after the shelter had quieted down, she grabbed a flashlight and knelt by his kennel. "All right, buddy," she murmured. "Let's see what you're hiding." She ran her hands carefully over his thick black fur, feeling for scars, tattoos, anything that might give her a clue. Then, just as she was about to give up, her fingers brushed against something rough behind his ear. Her stomach tightened. A scar, not the kind from an accident or a fight. A clean, deliberate scar. Emily's breath caught in her throat. This was a mark she recognized. Some military working dogs, especially those trained for combat, were given small hidden markings for identification. Heart pounding, she grabbed her phone and took a picture of the scar. She needed to be sure. If Echo was what she thought he was, this changed everything. The next morning, Emily sent the photo to an old acquaintance, Dr. Mark Holloway, a former military vet who specialized in K9 units. It only took 10 minutes for him to call her back. "Emily," his voice was urgent. "Where did you get this dog?" Emily's fingers tightened around the phone. "He was found outside town. No ID, no chip. Why?" Dr. Holloway hesitated. "Because that marking behind his ear? It's a military identifier. That's not a stray, Emily. That's a trained war dog." A chill ran down her spine. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed out loud made her chest tighten. "Are you sure?" She whispered. 100%, Dr. Holloway said. "And that's not all. The scar placement suggests he belonged to an elite unit. These dogs are highly trained. They don't just get lost." Emily swallowed. If Echo was military, why had no one reported him missing? Her mind raced with possibilities. Had his handler died? Had Echo escaped? Had someone abandoned him on purpose? She needed answers. The warning, Dr. Holloway's voice turned serious. "Listen, Emily, you need to be careful. If this dog belonged to a classified unit, there's a reason he's off the grid. Someone might be looking for him." Emily's pulse quickened. She glanced at Echo, who was watching her through the kennel bars. Calm, patient, waiting. Waiting for something only he understood. She suddenly felt like she was in the middle of something much bigger than she had realized. Echo wasn't just a lost dog. He was a missing piece of a story she wasn't supposed to know. And if Dr. Holloway was right, someone out there might be willing to do anything to keep that story buried. A heavy rainstorm rolled in that night, pounding against the tin roof of Willow Creek Animal Rescue. The wind howled through the cracks in the old wooden building, making the walls creak like an old ship lost at sea. But inside Echo's kennel, the black Labrador remained completely still. His eyes were fixed on the shelter's front door, as if he were waiting for something. Emily sat in her office, staring at the grainy photo of the scar behind Echo's ear on her phone. Dr. Holloway had been certain. This dog wasn't just a stray. He was military. But why hadn't anyone come looking for him? She needed more proof. Grabbing her flashlight, Emily stepped into the dimly lit shelter hallway. Most of the dogs had settled down for the night, their soft whimpers and occasional snores blending with the sound of the storm outside. When she reached Echo's kennel, he was already standing, waiting for her. "All right, buddy," she whispered, unlocking the gate. "Time to figure out who you really are." She led him into the examination room, where the vet table stood under the harsh glow of the overhead lamp. Echo obeyed instantly, hopping onto the table without hesitation. Emily had worked with dogs long enough to recognize a pattern. This wasn't just good behavior. This was training. She took a deep breath and ran her fingers through his thick fur again. She had already found the scar, but there had to be something more. Then, her fingers brushed against something hard. A tiny metal bump buried beneath his skin near his shoulder. Emily's heart pounded. A microchip. She grabbed the scanner and ran it over the spot. The screen beeped, displaying a code she didn't recognize. Frowning, she took a photo of the code and texted it to Dr. Holloway. "Emily, found a microchip. Doesn't register in normal databases. Any ideas?" She barely had time to put the scanner down before her phone vibrated. "That's a military encryption code. It won't show up in civilian databases, but I have a contact who might be able to trace it." Emily's throat went dry. This was bigger than she had expected. The next morning, Jake arrived early, shaking rain from his hoodie. "Did you figure anything out?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Emily hesitated. She didn't want to scare him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "I think he belonged to the military," she admitted. Jake's eyes widened. "Like a war dog?" Emily nodded. "Dr. Holloway is looking into it, but I have a bad feeling about this." Before Jake could respond, the shelter door creaked open. Emily turned and immediately felt something was wrong. A man stood in the doorway, dressed in dark clothes, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had an air of quiet authority that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "Morning," the man said, his voice calm but unreadable. "I'm looking for a dog, a black Labrador." Emily's stomach clenched. Something about this felt off. Sorry, she said carefully, forcing a polite smile. We have several Labradors here. Can you be more specific? The man's jaw tightened. He was hiding something. I lost my dog a few weeks back, he said. I heard a black lab was brought in. Thought it might be him. His gaze flicked toward the kennels, scanning the rows of dogs like a predator searching for prey. Emily's instincts screamed at her. This wasn't a grieving owner. This was someone looking for Echo, and not in a good way. Do you have any proof of ownership? Emily asked, crossing her arms. The man's lips pressed into a thin line. No tags, no chip, but I'd know him if I saw him. A lie. Emily knew it. She forced a smile. We actually have a policy. Any dog brought in is put under a mandatory 14-day hold before adoption or release. The man's eyes darkened. He didn't like that answer. That's a long time, he muttered. Emily shrugged. Rules are rules. The man studied her for a moment, then nodded stiffly. I'll come back later. As soon as he was gone, Emily turned to Jake. That guy was lying, she said. Jake swallowed hard. What do we do? Emily grabbed Echo's leash. We get him out of here. Emily had no doubt now. Echo was in danger. If someone was willing to lie to get him, that meant there was something about this dog they didn't want anyone to know. She wasn't going to wait around to find out what. She loaded Echo into her old pickup truck and hit the road, driving toward the only place she knew might have answers, Dr. Holloway's clinic, 3 towns over. As she drove through the rain, Echo sat silently in the passenger's seat, his gaze locked on the passing scenery. For the first time, Emily realized something. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused or anxious. He knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just a dog. This was a soldier. And for the first time since arriving at the shelter, he turned to Emily and placed a single paw on her leg. A silent message. Emily swallowed hard. You know exactly who you are, don't you? Echo blinked. He knew. She just had to find out why someone wanted to erase him. The rain drummed against the windshield as Emily sped down the empty highway, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Echo sat beside her, silent and composed, staring out the window as if he knew exactly where they were going. The events of the morning played over in her head. The strange man at the shelter, his too calm demeanor, his insistence on finding a black Labrador with no chip or tags. That wasn't a grieving owner. That was a man on a mission. And now she was on the run. Emily reached for her phone and dialed Dr. Holloway's number. It rang twice before he picked up. Emily? I think someone is looking for Echo, she said, glancing at the dog beside her. And I don't think it's for a good reason. There was silence on the other end. Then, where are you? I'm driving toward your clinic. Should be there in 30 minutes. Holloway exhaled. All right, get here fast. I might have some news. Emily didn't like the sound of that. What had he found? The moment Emily pulled into Holloway's clinic, she saw him waiting outside. The older vet had a deep frown on his face, his arms crossed. She opened the truck door, and Echo jumped out effortlessly, landing with precision and control. Another sign, this wasn't a normal dog. Holloway didn't say a word. He simply motioned for her to follow him inside. Once they were in his office, he turned his laptop toward her. You were right, he said, tapping the screen. Echo, his real name is Titan. He was a military working dog assigned to an elite search and rescue unit. His handler was Staff Sergeant Daniel Foster. Emily's breath hitched. Where is Foster now? Holloway's jaw tightened. That's the problem. He went missing. Emily's heart pounded. According to the records, Titan and Sergeant Foster had been deployed in a high-risk training mission in a classified location. Something had gone wrong. The team had been separated, and Foster was never found. Titan had somehow made his way back to civilization, but why hadn't the military been searching for him? Before Emily could ask, Holloway continued. I made a few calls, he said, and the responses I got? Let's just say, someone doesn't want this story getting out. Emily's stomach turned. Who? Holloway exhaled. The man who came looking for Echo, he's not some worried owner. He's military. Not the kind that operates in daylight. Emily's blood ran cold. Emily, Holloway said, lowering his voice, I think Echo, Titan, knows something. Maybe something about what really happened to Foster. Emily turned to the dog who sat patiently by her side, his dark eyes filled with something deeper than instinct. Echo wasn't just waiting for someone. He was carrying a secret. Emily ran a hand through her hair. If Foster is still out there, what do we do? Holloway hesitated. There's one person who might know more. Foster's sister, Claire. She's been trying to get answers for months. Emily didn't need to think twice. Where is she? Holloway pulled up an address. Seattle. I can get in touch, but you're running out of time. Emily knew what he meant. The man from the shelter? He wasn't done looking. And if he found out where she was going, he wouldn't be coming alone. Emily loaded Echo back into the truck and hit the road. She had barely made it 10 miles before she spotted headlights in her rearview mirror. A black SUV. Her pulse quickened. Could just be a coincidence. Then it sped up. Emily's breath caught. Not a coincidence. They had found her. The SUV pulled up beside her, its tinted windows preventing her from seeing inside. Then it swerved toward her. Emily gritted her teeth and yanked the wheel, barely avoiding the impact. Echo let out a sharp breath, steady but alert. Then something incredible happened. As if sensing the danger, Echo stood, turned toward the window, and let out the deepest, most guttural growl Emily had ever heard. The SUV hesitated. Whoever was inside hadn't expected the dog to react. Emily took the chance and hit the gas, speeding toward the nearest exit. She had one goal now, get to Claire Foster before they did. It took nearly 10 hours of non-stop driving before Emily pulled up to a modest suburban house in Seattle. Before she could even get out, the front door opened. A woman stood there, her expression a mix of hope and disbelief. Titan? Echo's ears perked. And then, for the first time since arriving at the shelter, he barked. Claire choked back a sob as she rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Echo pushed his nose against her, his tail wagging just slightly. Emily stepped out, her heart hammering. Claire Foster? Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. I thought he was dead. Emily exhaled. You need to tell me everything you know about what happened to your brother. Claire hesitated, then glanced at Echo. I think Titan might already have the answer. Inside, Claire pulled out a USB drive. This was the last message Daniel sent me before he disappeared. She plugged it into her laptop, and a video popped up. A grainy image of a young man in military gear appeared on the screen. Claire inhaled sharply. That's him. Daniel Foster looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, determined. If you're watching this, he said, then something went wrong. They're going to try and cover it up, but Titan knows the truth. Emily's heart pounded. Daniel continued, if he made it back, he'll lead you to me. Trust him. Then the screen went black. Silence filled the room. Emily looked at Echo, at Titan. He wasn't just a lost dog. He was the only key to finding a man the world thought was gone. And now, someone was willing to do anything to keep that secret buried. Emily squared her shoulders. We're going to find him. Claire nodded. And we're going to find out who tried to bury him. Titan sat between them, his gaze steady, his mission clear. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 1 month later, the crisp autumn air swept through the small Washington town where Daniel Foster had been found. His body was weak, his mind recovering from months of isolation, but his spirit, it was unbreakable. He sat on the front steps of Claire's house, staring down at the black Labrador who had never given up on him. Titan. Emily stood nearby, watching the two of them with a quiet smile. She still couldn't believe what they had uncovered. The military had classified Foster as missing, then abandoned the search when the truth became inconvenient. He had survived a botched mission, stranded in the wilderness with no supplies, and while the world had moved on, his dog never did. Titan had traveled miles, dodged danger, and fought against every odd to find his way back. Daniel reached out, running a hand down Titan's back. The dog didn't flinch. For the first time in months, he was home. You saved me, Daniel murmured. Titan let out a slow, deep breath and rested his head on Daniel's knee. Emily swallowed against the lump in her throat. She had spent years running Willow Creek Animal Rescue, believing she had seen it all. But Titan had changed her. He had taught her that some stories don't end at the shelter doors. They begin there. Claire stepped forward. The investigation is still ongoing, but thanks to Titan, we have proof now. Emily nodded. The USB drive had contained more than just a final message. It had logs, encrypted files, and evidence of the truth. Whoever had tried to erase Daniel's existence had failed. Titan had made sure of that. Daniel looked up at Emily. So what happens now? She crossed her arms. Well, Titan can stay with you, obviously. Daniel chuckled. Like I could ever let him go again. Titan's ears perked, his deep brown eyes watching Daniel like a soldier waiting for orders. Emily hesitated. I was also thinking, there are probably more dogs like him out there. More handlers who got lost in the system. Maybe we should do something about that. Daniel exchanged a glance with Claire, who nodded. I like the sound of that, he said. A warmth spread through Emily's chest. For the first time in years, she felt like she was stepping into something bigger than just saving stray dogs. She was bringing families back together. Titan stood, shook out his fur and looked between Emily and Daniel. For the first time, Emily could see it clearly. His mission was complete. But another one was just beginning. And this time, she wasn't going to let him do it alone.